Hi everyone, Dave McKeown here from the Church Explained podcast. Welcome to our bite-sized episode. That means it's going to be less than 10 minutes long, and you can listen to this wherever you are on the fly, something quickly just to help you in your day as you're seeking to grow and develop as a leader. In this episode, we're joined again by Andy Hopper, who is an amazing leader, and he heads up the Hillsong Leadership Network, connecting with other churches, trying to encourage them to be part of something big. Now, we asked them the question around this idea of, should we be copying other churches? If you're heading up a church, if you're leading a church, should you be copying other churches like Hillsong, Elevation Church, or other churches like that? Or do we need to do something different? Well, his answer was brilliant, because he said, yes, please copy. That's what I'm here for, to help you copy. But he did give some ideas of when we copy, we need to pay attention to three things. So listen to this show today. You'll discover what those three things are when you copy other people's ideas. Remember the three things he mentions in the show. We hope you enjoyed. Be inspired as you listen.
I guess you've seen the temptation for leaders to copy from Hillsong or other successful, fruitful churches. I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about whether that's okay or if it's not okay, and just the reasoning behind that.
Great question.
Yeah, it's good. It's a great question. Yeah, I think it depends on where your heart is. So I'd say there's two sides to it. So there's the side of, we're going to learn from and copy another, successful church, influential church, because like the Elon Musk example of because of the mission demands it, and we want to use everything that we possibly can to achieve the mission. Or there's the side of going that's, I can't be bothered to think for myself of what might work, and so I'm just going to look around and see what anyone else is doing. Or I'm just going to look for that silver bullet so I don't have to work as hard. So I think it depends on the spirit with which you bring to it. But I think if you do have the right spirit, then I think it's about being able to distinguish between something that Pastor Robert Ferguson, who's our teaching pastor at Hillsong, he calls the 3 Ps. And so I actually already referenced it, I think maybe in your introduction to my bio, in terms of teaching churches the principles and the practices. Yeah. And so those are actually the first and the third P. So these 3 Ps are the principles, the patterns, and the practices. And so Pastor Robert, he talks about principles as being these eternal principles that work in all situations, all circumstances for eternity. You've got patterns that work at certain times and certain circumstances that aren't, some of them might be eternal, kind of God-breathed, and some might not. And then you've got practices that are really just kind of man-made. They work only in specific times and certain circumstances. And so if I was to break that down for you, give you an example of, say, a church copies Hillsong that has a heart and soul night. And so they go, Hillsong does heart and soul nights, and therefore if we do that, we will grow, we will be healthy, we'll be successful, whatever. And they don't realize, well, that's just a practice. That's something that we've invented for now, and in a year's time could completely change how we do it. But then there's the pattern. So a pattern is a level above that, and it alludes to something a bit more eternal, something that is more reproducible throughout history, throughout church, which is that there is a core to your church that are looking for inspiration and being part of a community. And then there's an overarching principle, which is that community, that we're made for community, that God has designed the church to serve one another and for it to be a body and a family. And so all that to say, if you go, well, we're going to do a heart and soul night, but there's actually and so you use the logo and the branding and whatever, but when you get to it, there's no sense of, this is family, this is fun, this is a level of vulnerability, transparency, community building. If you haven't got that, ultimately it comes from a revelation. And so I think that's the thing of people, copy from Hillsong, copy from Life Church or Saddleback or whoever, but try and get their original revelation of why are they doing it like that? Yeah. What was their reason for deciding it to look like that? And does that resonate with you? Is that the way that you does that resonate with the revelation that God's given you for how your church is to function? And so in terms of copying, I think, essentially my role is to encourage people to copy Hillsong. But
Okay.
the thing is that Instagram is it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because I've seen over the last, few years as Instagram has grown so big is that people can see, they see these other churches on Instagram, they see the crowd shots and the best shots and all those kinds of things and the branding for an event, and they go, yeah, we're going to do that. And they don't understand all the decisions that went in from that influential church of why they're doing it like that. What are the things they've wrestled with? What are the things they've said, we're not going to do it like that, we're going to do it like this, because of the revelation that they have. And so if you just copy, if you haven't done any of that deep work in yourself to look at those three principles, is how does this work with the principles that we believe that the kingdom of God and the church needs to be built on, the patterns that God uses, and then the practices that are going to work in 2022 in Sydney that are going to be different to 1996 in London.
Yeah.
And we got to wrestle with those things, and Instagram kind of bypasses a whole lot of that. And so people can be copying for the wrong reasons and copying the wrong things, really.
Great stuff. Well, that's it for this Church Explained podcast. As we've said, it's been great to have Andy with us. And if you're, wherever you're tuning into this, if you could rate, review, subscribe, that helps us get the podcast out. You'll find the show notes in the comments and the notes below. And you can check out Andy at network.hillsong.com, but also you can check out icon.church/open, where you'll find the show notes for this episode, but also past episodes, and also free resources on there. It's been great to be together, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Church Explained podcast.